This is an express train, and the next stop is TMG.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to TMG. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr. I enjoy discovering and sharing real-life moments of inspiration from everyday people. And this show is about finding moments of inspiration for our everyday lives. And look, and if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of TMG, Tell Me Something Good. I'm your host, Travis Patton Sr., and don't forget to check out our Facebook page. That's Tell Me Something Good with a capital T. Today, we're talking about controversy. Yeah, the benefits of a good controversy. Now, this is going to get good. When we hear the word controversial, what do you think of? What comes to mind? We may have these mental images of something that is polarizing, that causes arguments, that brings into focus things of questionable origin or something with a questionable intentions. Sometimes we can hear the word controversial and we begin to think about nefarious actions or dirty deeds. We begin to think about things that just don't seem right, things that don't seem to fit in, things that interrupt our normal or interrupt our patterned way of thinking. However, everything that's controversial isn't all negative. Think about it, all right? And that sometimes controversy is required to give birth to greater things. Here's an example, okay? Here's an example. If it was not for accepting the controversial idea behind the 19th Amendment, women would not have the right to vote today. That was pretty controversial to think that a woman should be able to decide who's the next senator or the next president or who's the next governor or the next mayor of a town. Because before then, women could have an opinion, but they could not have a voice. And in passing the 19th Amendment, it gave women a voice in America. We had opinions, but they did not have a voice. And that idea was pretty controversial. It fought and went against the grain of the popular vote that day, of the popular idea, of the popular belief. The belief that women weren't intelligent enough to select a president, to select any elected official. Now that is really controversial when you think about that. You're saying they're rational beings but they can't vote. They have to be subjugated to just whatever someone else has voted in, but they have no say-so. So that was pretty controversial. Sometimes controversy, when we think about it, we start thinking about all the bad things we've heard about in the news and the most recent things we heard in the news. But sometimes controversy is a necessary ingredient to get the results that we need. And we take that into context of all the things we've recently heard in the news. When you think about racial inequality that has been going on for years in this country, for centuries in this country, and all the recent racial events that have taken place is starting to have greater discussions about racial inequality. It starts to have greater discussions about racial injustice. And sometimes controversy is a necessary ingredient to get the results that we need. Now, listen, I'm not talking about developing some way of attacking other individuals, okay? So let's make that plain. Nor am I talking about attacking some entities. I'm merely saying that just because an idea begins in controversy does not mean we can't benefit from it as a whole. Now that I have your attention, and now that I know you're listening because we're talking about controversy, let's continue, okay? Now, throughout history, there have been controversial inventions and discussions around those ideas. It was controversial when people began to talk about inventing the air conditioner, a way to stay cool in the summer in your home. Come on. You mean I can have the cool of the winter in my home in the summer? You're crazy. That'll never happen. That'll never catch on. Ideas like that don't just catch on. No one's going to believe that can work. But it did. And here we are enjoying the air conditioner in our homes, in our cars, in our offices. Air conditioners are almost as portable as we are. They can be found literally almost everywhere. From our cars, even on golf carts. They even have air conditioners installed on golf carts. So air conditioners are pretty much everywhere we are as people. And every time we turn on an air conditioner, what we're doing is we're reigniting or starting back up that idea of having that air conditioner where we go. Here's another one. Here's another case in point. The invention of the electric light bulb. Now, before then, there were candles, there were gas lights, and having the idea of being able to have light when you want it, where you want it, was an idea that really just rocked the world at that time. Throughout history, we have controversial ideas there has been controversial ideas and discussion around these ideas. I want you to think about this. What would this world look like if those controversial ideas were abandoned? What would it look like? Businesses would close earlier because the sun would be going down. Your favorite restaurant may not be open because we don't have any light. What about the idea of indoor plumbing? Yeah, I don't even want to think about that one and how that might look like with everyone having outhouses in their backyards or on the back porch. Can you imagine? It's the middle of the winter and you have to use the restroom and you have to go to this porta potty. Yeah, imagine what this world will look like if some of those controversial ideas were abandoned simply because they stirred up discussions, simply because they were too extreme, simply because they were too ahead of their time. I think people who have the courage to present controversial ideas are kind of like explorers because they're willing to tackle the forest that others aren't willing to enter into. I think that deserves saying again. People who are controversial, who are willing to present controversial ideas, they're like explorers. They're willing to tackle or take head on ideas that others aren't willing to address. They're willing to go into the forest and cut down trees where others individuals say, well, that's too many trees. How do we know how fertile the ground is if we don't cut it down? If we never enter into it? Okay, here's another example. And I thought about this and I was like, yeah, that's right. You know, kind of one of those light bulb moments that came to me also. So how about this? Do you remember being in grade school or elementary school or high school and we learned the world was round. Now, don't laugh, okay? Now, I know that sounds like a pretty rudimentary thing to say. I know it sounds pretty elementary to say something like that right now, because right now it's a pretty much accepted and proven fact that the earth itself is round. Newsflash, the earth is round, okay? So, but however, think about this, and we're talking about controversy. There was a time when many scholars believed it was actually flat. They believed that the earth was actually flat. They believed if you could sail so far that at one point you would eventually sail off the side of the earth. Yeah. Imagine that you could just sail so far or walk so far, then eventually you just kind of fall off the side of the earth. That was the popular idea. That was the popular belief. Now, it wasn't, now before you kind of get yourself ruffled, it wasn't just average or everyday persons that believed that. Can you imagine actual scientists and monarchs, rulers believing the earth was flat? Actual heads of state. And if you believed anything different than this, you would get ostracized. You would be alienated. You would get branded as a heretic or treasonous. And isn't it crazy how sometimes we can have ideas and concepts and plans that are so ahead of its time that people begin to ostracize us. They stay away from us. They stop calling. They won't return our text message because our ideas are so far ahead of its time that they say we must be out of our mind. There's no way you are thinking reasonably or rational with an idea like that. And people thought the earth was flat, and if you believed anything different, you would be ostracized. It's the same as this today. If they were on if they had Facebook back then, you would block them and remove them from your friends. Like, you know what? He's a nut. I'm just gonna just block him. I'm gonna remove him. You know how sometimes on Facebook, when people just post really random crazy things and you just block their comment or you hide their comment so they can never comment again. They'll be typing, but their comment will never be seen. That's how it was. If you believed anything different, they would just censor you. They would just say, you know what, your comments will never be heard, only because your ideas were controversial. Not because your idea was bad, just because it didn't go along with what the popular idea was. There were actually monarchs, rulers, and heads of state that believed the earth was flat. But not everyone, of course, bought into this idea of a flat earth. Explorers believed otherwise. This is why I believe explorers, people who are willing to jump on top or embrace some ideas that may be controversial, this is why I see them as explorers, because they hear the earth is flat, but they want to prove otherwise. Be an explorer. So explorers believe otherwise. Can you imagine what the nations of the world would look like if explorers believed the popular ideas of that day? Can you imagine if they didn't explore? Can you imagine if they didn't try to prove? Can you imagine what if they didn't try to find out for themselves? The borders of some nations would look differently because it would all be, well, it's flat, so why go any further? I'll fall off the side. If we all accepted just the popular idea of the day, can you imagine the discussions would be, how the discussions would change? Because we all accepted the same idea. You know, the Cambridge Dictionary gave a pretty good definition that I thought was pretty cool about controversial. The word controversial. It means causing disagreement or discussion. That's pretty good. Causing disagreement or discussion. One of the first things a controversial idea will do is cause a disagreement. Because it mainly is not because it disagrees so much with the individual, because it disagrees with the popular ideas that may exist at the time or the popular belief. So they're not just merely disagreeing with you as a person, it's disagreeing because it goes against what we all believe. And sometimes, you have to be controversial in order to just make it. What if you grew up in a household, or you're around friends and people and friends or whoever, and they all had this one idea about you? They all had this idea, or maybe you yourself, maybe you had an idea about yourself. Maybe you didn't believe that you could be more than who you were in your life. Maybe you didn't believe you could be more than where you were born or where you started. I have news for you. Believing that you can be different or better than what you may have been told in your life, that's controversial. Because you're going against what you used to believe, and that sometimes you have to be controversial within yourself to believe that I am better, that I can be better than what I was told. Think about that. Sometimes, in order to just make it in life, you have to be willing to be controversial. You have to be willing to disagree with all the negativity that you've heard about you. You have to be willing to disagree with all the bad things someone said you were. You have to be willing to disagree with that. In order to go further, in order to make it beyond that kind of ingrained belief and thinking, you have to tell yourself it's okay to be controversial, because it's okay that I become a better person. That's crazy. So we're talking about, the 19th Amendment, women, and guys, get this, believing that all people are created equal, regardless of their race, creed, or color, during the time of this controversial, because the belief is that only certain individuals had these rights. To believe that at a time when it was like that is completely controversial. And it's not because you're battling just the individual, you're battling the popular belief. Listen, just because an idea is controversial doesn't mean it can't be beneficial. Throughout history, controversial ideas have been the birthing place of some of the greatest inventions and discoveries we take advantage of today. Here's a little fact. Matthew Henson was an American explorer. He was part of the crew of Robert Edwin Peary in 1909. Well, why is this controversial? Because Matthew Henson was an African American. He was not given the credit he deserved for helping to co-discover what is now known as the North Pole. Because of racial tensions and prejudices during this time, he was largely left out of history books concerning this. To think, an African American helped to discover the North Pole while there were still largely segregated areas in the United States. Here's another example. The Wright brothers' idea of flight was controversial. People fought against it. They talked about it. And now people fly from one end of the world to the other on the wings of something that began under scrutiny and controversy. Just because the idea was controversial, they didn't abandon it. They refused to give up on this controversial idea. Some of the things we give up on are some of the very things the world may need to see. They are some of the very things the world may need to hear. Just because it's controversial doesn't mean it can't be beneficial. You may have made poor choices, but that does not mean you don't have anything to contribute. There is more to any of us than just the mistakes or decisions we make. And sometimes just believing that you can be better or a better person is controversial. You could be the first one in your family to graduate high school, graduate college, earn a degree, start a new business, start a new career, all because you decide to fight against the popular belief that you would never amount to anything. All because you fought against the popular idea that you would never be anything more than the last mistake that you made. Listen, your ideas may be controversial, meaning unpopular with the times or common to your area. It doesn't necessarily mean that it should be abandoned. Coming up with or creating new approaches to tackle old problems or to address potentially new ones is innovative. It requires imagination and creativity. You will need boldness to confidently talk about what others may be shying away from or haven't even considered at all. Sometimes considering a new idea means accepting the controversy that goes along with it. There will be discussions, there may be debates, but sometimes you have to be willing to see it through the controversy in order to see the benefits from it. Sometimes many of us want to begin new things, new chapters in our life, but we don't want everything that comes along with it. That sometimes could mean bringing ourselves under scrutiny. It could mean the controversy of being known. Yeah, when you get known, when you start doing something new, when you start a new chapter in your life, when you begin new things, it comes to the controversy of being known. Now, that's another discussion all by itself. Now, do not allow the discussion about you to stop you from pursuing what you believe may be a benefit to help you contribute. Imagine being in a meeting and you have an idea that you think will shed light on the discussion, but you're too afraid to bring it up because you think it may be controversial, because it's not like anything anyone else has ever heard or said. Or maybe you're in a discussion with someone about how you feel about something that took place. Sharing may not be popular, but it certainly can help address it. The point is this: we are surrounded by controversial things every day in our lives, and we leverage them to our advantage. They help us achieve goals and set new ones. They transport us to exotic locations and can even place faraway destinations at our fingertips. We benefit from them. So don't be so quick to shy away from an idea just because it's controversial. It could be just what we all need to hear. Look, guys, I want you to do something for me. I want you to go to our Facebook page. That's Tell Me Something Good with a capital T, and let us know a few good ideas you have been thinking about that might fit in with the topic. Or can you think of any new ones? Go to the Facebook page, Tell Me Something Good with a capital T, and I want you to look for the post that's there that says that's controversial. And I want you to leave some information. I will be commenting as well. And as always, thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing. Share it, like us, enjoy it, tell somebody else about it. And in parting, if you're going to tell me something, then tell me something good.